Okay folks, welcome to the last of the videos for the evaluation. This one is about E3 and it's about the resources and the examples that you will find and where you can find these things to help you with E3. Now E3 has traditionally been the hardest of the performance standards to hit. Students struggle a little bit more with this one than they do with E1 and E2. The main reason being that this one is about your research outcome, but not about the product that you produced for assessment type 2, also called a research outcome. So you're not evaluating things like how pretty your PowerPoint is or how good your magazine article looks. You're actually evaluating the research that you did based upon the outcomes or your findings of that research. I hope that becomes a little bit clearer as we go through this. It might very well be worth your while watching the other video on E3 a couple of times to make sure that you really do understand that distinction and what it is that you're being asked to look at for E3. So let's have a look at some of the resources that are available for you for this one. Don't want to save it. So if we have a look in the usual place, so I'm in the public drive, Nicole Cross Research Project in Evaluation. Things that we're going to have a look at in here. There are examples for E3 where I have collected together a range of high level and lower level parts from previous students' work. Again, please be aware that this is actual students' work. So while you are critiquing it and thinking about it, remember that probably people that you might know of. Keep that in mind and how you would feel if someone was tearing your work apart. There is a document called Planning for E3 that we will have a quick look at, and there is something else in here as well, can't remember what it is, the external assessment part here. Okay, we'll start with that one I think. So that's this one. Now I've shown you this before. These are the assessment advice that's given to teachers to look at when it comes to marking of E3, what students need to be doing and what markers need to be looking at. So we're looking at the third dot point down here, which is evaluating the quality of the research outcome. In this area, we're looking for students to make balanced judgments about the quality of the research outcome. However, the focus of this needs to be on the significance of your findings and the particular features that influence the overall value and worth of your research outcome, including the extent to which the question has been resolved. So where it goes, the particular features that influence the overall value and worth of your research outcome, that is looking at and determining where you get your information from and how credible, reliable, valid, etc. all those sources are. The extent to which the question has been resolved might include looking at whether or not there is, for example, one key finding that is resolved to a better extent than the others, maybe because you didn't quite have enough information in an area that you were looking for, or maybe the data wasn't as reliable, or maybe you could only find sources of information that were based on American academics and information rather than Australian context type stuff, that kind of thing. We'll talk more about that as we go through some of the examples. Again, just like in E1 and E2, this performance standard down here, which is S3, is also incorporated or looked at for E3. Organise the information coherently and communicate ideas accurately and appropriately. So that again is about your writing standard. So it's an easy one to make sure that you are hitting at a B standard throughout this task, which can then ensure that you're meeting the minimum requirements. So your paragraph structure, using your teal paragraphs, writing in a legible and coherent manner, making sure that the words that you have selected are appropriate for use, not just going to the thesaurus and choosing words that you think make you actually sound intelligent when they're completely out of context. Make sure that you have got the right words for the right context, etc. And that can all help you get a really good grade for this one, which then helps if you are not as strong in one of these areas. I hope that makes sense. So that document is the external assessment. Again, remember that we are in the P drive over here. The next document that I want you to have a look at from in here is this one, which is planning for your E3 component of your research outcome. All you need to do for this one, your key findings and the focus area of your question, just list them down in there very briefly. What do you think are the strengths of your research in this area? So that might be that it's based on Australian Bureau of Statistics census data from 2022. So a strength is that it's up to date, it's from a highly credible and reliable source. Anyone can go and check it and for accuracy. The weakness of your research in this area and how could it be improved. You know, you might have a survey that you're basing your data upon, but you might not have had as many responses as you liked, or you might have found that the questions weren't worded quite as well as what you would have hoped to allow you to answer that part of your research as well as you would have liked. So if you had been able to run a second survey and you'd been able to change the wording of the questions, if you'd been able to hit your target audience better, that kind of thing, that could have improved the quality of your research outcome. Any other relevant points that affected the overall quality of your findings in this area? Now that could be anything from, you know, that you only have 3 sources that you cited in key finding 1, whereas key finding 3 you might have had half a dozen sources, including some primary and some secondary sources, which meant that your resolution to that part of your question is based on a lot more data and a lot more information, and therefore it's more credible. Hope that makes sense. So use that one to get yourself thinking and planning for the E3 component. The next document to have a look at, now this one is what I've actually run through in the other video, although I think it's in a black background and in a PowerPoint and whatever. So I'm not going to spend time going through that for you here, but do be aware that this one, which is the planning and writing scaffold, as I said with the other sections, E1 and E2, when you've got like a range of questions like here, you don't have to address every single criteria or dot point that's listed here. Choose what is relevant for you and what is going to give you the best opportunity to make those judgments about the quality of your research in your final piece. But that's just there if you need to go and refer to it. Finally, that leaves us with the exemplars. And I've put together in this Word document here just 4 or 5 examples. As I said, they're from previous students' work. A couple of these are only a couple of years old. You probably know a couple of these students that wrote these ones. A couple of them are from the SACE Board website, and I've included them because they also have some moderator notes, which give you a bit of an idea of what moderators and markers are looking for when they're looking at your work as well. So this first one here, the students' question overall was, how does living in a blended or step family affect a teen's mental health? This is their E3 section. Now you'll notice they've written 560 words in this section. One of their other sections was slightly lower, so it was 440 or whatever, but overall they have hit the 1500 words in total. So this is a really high quality piece of work, this one. If you spend a little bit of time reading through it, hopefully you will understand why. For example, although my outcome is not a professional piece of work, I still believe that I covered my findings in great detail. My findings were written in a clear manner and met the requirements of the subject. I believe my question was successfully resolved as I used a wide range of valid sources such as data from government websites, credible news sites such as The Conversation, Google Scholar for a range of peer-reviewed and cited sources from academics in the field of adolescent mental health, and other relevant sources such as an interview with a local psychologist who works in this field, which also allowed me to follow up queries via email communication. Therefore, I believe my outcome is of a high standard. So they've made a judgment. They've told the moderators about the different types of research processes that they used. They've explained why they are relevant. They've also explained why they're good quality. So they've demonstrated here that they understand that peer reviewing of academic papers and having academic papers that have been cited by other sources increases the credibility of the information that's in them. They've also spoken to a local psychologist, and they have indicated that they've also done some follow-up. So, you know, when another question arose, I was able to follow that up via email, that kind of thing. So it demonstrates the level of research that they were able to do and the types of sources that they were able to find. My outcomes, 4 major key findings. The fact that I was able to find good quality information relevant to all my key findings gives validity to my outcome. I did find that one area was easier to find information, and that was both easier to be synthesised and more substantiated than others. This key finding was how society can better help teens in this situation. The resolution to this key finding I consider to be the most useful, as it provides recommendations that would assist a large number of teenagers going through family separations. Interviewing someone who was a professional in this area confirmed all other research I'd conducted, made sure my findings were highly valid and credible. Research from the Australian Bureau of Statistics made it easy for me to relate information to my outcome. My main focus from this website was being able to see how teens live in what type of family, how many teens live in what type of family. This also helped me be able to describe and define the types of families. While finding that information, I was then able to find related data revolving around mental health problems caused due to parental separation and the effect on teenagers. This ensured that key finding 1 was well researched and the data used was accurate, up to date and relevant to the Australian context of my question. This research also allowed me to look further into the situation of rural youth as an aspect of my question that would not have been possible without finding and analysing the ABS data. So they really have made some evaluative statements about that particular source of information and its importance to the overall findings that they produced in their research outcome. The resolution of my 4 key findings provides new information for myself, teens and their parents. While not new or groundbreaking, collecting it together in this context means it may be helpful to those in this situation. I also present a clear case for increased funding for services in this area, in particular in rural areas or by means such as telehealth that can be more readily accessed by rural and isolated youth. The discussion of my findings with a balance of opinions throughout my outcome means that it's accessible for anyone to read that is affected by this situation, to develop a better understanding of what effect family separation may have on teens and how they could help. Overall, I believe my piece is highly relevant to my intended audience and presented in such a way that makes it easily accessible. The resolution to my question is of high quality because of the relevant and credible research processes and methods I've based my findings upon. So that particular E3 discussion is most definitely in the A band, if not in the A+ band. It's at the higher end of what you would expect to see. The next example, the question that the student was seeking to answer: how can we define a psychopath and what are the differences between a psychopathic murderer and a sane murderer? You guys come up with some awesome questions. E3, evaluation of the quality of the research outcome. I believe the overall quality of my research outcome was pretty good due to the vast amount of information I was able to base my findings on. Even though I only really used internet-based sources and research processes, I was able to find many different sources written by many different reputable authors, so making some evaluations about the quality of the information that they've based their resolution on. By collecting and cross-checking their information, the quality of my findings is high. I could have improved on my overall research by seeking other sources such as documentaries, books and TED Talks, although I don't believe finding sources such as these would have affected my findings or the resolution of my question. Do be careful once again about not spending time focusing on what you didn't do, because that's not going to get you too many more grades. You might, for example, talk about a survey that you did and how it would have been useful to have done a follow-up survey so that you could have better targeted questions. That kind of thing is fine, but I don't want to see paragraphs based on what you didn't do. A little bit of an evaluation type language is used in there as well. Although my sub-questions continued to change through the process of writing my outcome, the information I collected from my sources fit really well into my questions and allowed me to tie my questions together. Sometimes those questions actually need to change because that's the information that you've got, and it's fine to point that out as well. I believe that out of my key findings, my first, how can we define a psychopath, was better substantiated than the rest due to it being an easier question to answer and there being more information that would help me answer that specific question. So that's the total of what they did for E3, and as I said, this is the area that my students struggle with. I can tell you that this student's E1 and E2 combined with this had them in the B standard in total, but this particular response here is definitely in the C band. So that's one of those examples where, because of the way that they write and that last performance standards about language and use of language, etc., certainly helps them bring them up, but it's also the quality of the other two evaluative areas that also help bring them up, so be aware of that. How does the South Australian Government legislation and programs regarding single-use plastics influence other states of Australia? I'm not going to read through this one, I'll let you do that, see what you can find in there about the different types of research that they have conducted and the importance for the different key findings that they used. Talk about the credibility of the research that they have conducted, whether they have followed things up, etc., etc., their researchers, the appropriateness for their intended audience, etc. See what you can find in there about that one. Now this one is from an example that I used, I think, with E1, the fruitarian diet one that you might have seen earlier. The only paragraph that the student included in this one, I got some feedback from people. My art teacher liked the design of the pamphlet. Remember, we're not actually focusing on how pretty your PowerPoint was or how stunningly you put together the graphics in your magazine article. So the relevance of that one's pretty dodgy. My friends felt it was really information. I'm assuming that was supposed to be really informative. Mum said I did a good job, but I should have talked more about vegetarian diets. I was hoping to find the lady at the market, but couldn't, so I could show her my pamphlet. I'm convinced to stay on the fruitarian diet. So you can see down here that the moderator has said that evaluation of the quality of the research outcome is superficial. It briefly describes the format of the pamphlet and it touches on the content. The evaluation is in the form of a personal comment I really liked and a wider audience. I got some feedback from people, nothing specific. The responses were recorded but limited in indicating the value of the research outcome. So overall, this student's response received a D, but that most definitely in the E standard. The thing that would have brought them up to the D standard was the E1 section. Oh, sorry. Here we have another example, and this one's based on roller coasters, I believe. Before writing up my outcome, I had to make sure that all pieces of information was referenced, as if you do not use references, it's plagiarism. As I did not prepare and plan for this well, it really slowed me down as I had to go back and locate the reference lists for all my sources. One thing I should have improved on was the annotations I wrote for each section of information, as I believed it could have been improved. I've discovered throughout the research project that my time management needed to improve, as I was lazy about throughout my research. I should have used my time wisely so I'd be able to acquire extra information on my topic. That's a bit of a barrier to their research, but again, it's talking about what you didn't do, not entirely relevant. Time management is not relevant to the actual sources of information used, so steer clear of it. I think the outcome of my research will teach people about this interesting subject. I'll be able to teach people new things, such as the themes of a ride and the design of one. My final outcome included all the main facts I've collected throughout the year that I believe could hold great worth in answering my question. It's been a great learning experience for me and was enjoyable, and I have not lost interest in roller coasters. Until those last couple of words, you don't even know what they're talking about. It could be based on anyone's research project. You need to make sure that your evaluation would not apply to anyone but yours. So you can see here that it is a superficial evaluation of the quality. There is no reference to the successes or weaknesses of the outcome apart from the personal value of the project overall. Again, the other two sections that the student wrote in relation to this evaluation help bring it up to a D+ standard. D+, remember, is not a passing research project. You need a C- or better. So this student is relying on the research outcome and their folio grade to bring them up to higher than that C-. The last one that we've got here, this is again in the A standard, and I've included it because it does have marker comments. It would be worth you spending a little bit of time having a look at and reading through, seeing where they have found the information that makes it an A standard. As you can see down here, the marker has said that the outcome is very strong, the decisions that are being spoken about is very strong, and the writing itself is very strong. So overall, this is an A standard piece of work as well. Okay, have a bit of a read through that one. This one is about colonisation of Mars, and it's quite an interesting read as well. All of these evaluations that I've included on this particular example piece, you will find the whole of them, as in like the whole piece if you want to have a look at them, in the evaluation exemplars. So we have the step and blended families up here. We've got sociopath and psychotics, or it might be, I had two people do the same. Oh, one was the psychology of a psychopath and one was the difference between. So there's two there that you could have a look at. There is down here the fruitarian diet and the roller coaster one, and I can't remember which one the other one is. Mars up there. Okay, so if you want to have a look at the entire evaluations of those three that I chose there to put in front of you, that's where you will find them as well. Okay, good luck with that. As I said, you may find that you need to watch the other video a couple of times. Hopefully this video gives you enough that you can get started on. And the first thing that I would be doing when it comes to E3 in the evaluation is the planning for E3. Jot yourself down some notes, some ideas, and then you can start actually writing up that last 500 word piece. And this is the last 500 word piece, guys. You are getting so close to the end. Stick with it. I'm so proud of you getting this far, and I look forward to reading your final pieces very soon. So thank you and well done. See you later.